They say the older we get, the more we appreciate peace. Quiet mornings. Familiar routines. A hot cup of coffee in the same chair we've sat in for years. But what if I told you that some of those peaceful routines may be doing more harm than good? That the habits we've trusted, habits we've repeated for decades, might be silently increasing our risk of stroke? Hi, I'm Harold. I'm 76, a retired history teacher, and I've lived through my health wake-up call. What I've learned since is something every senior deserves to hear. Because stroke doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't crash in like a thunderstorm. Sometimes, it tiptoes in. In the silence of skipping water. In the stillness of sitting too long in bed. In the tension of reading the news before your brain is even fully awake. These moments feel safe, but they may not be. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 simple morning habits that could be silently tripling your stroke risk after 60. Not to scare you, but to empower you. Because when you know better, you do better. And small changes, really small ones, can make all the difference. So before you finish that cup of coffee, stay with me. This story might just save your life. If you've ever reached for your toothbrush, and your hand missed it by just an inch. If you've tried to button your shirt and your fingers felt clumsy, not numb, not weak, just off. You may have felt what many seniors ignore. See, the first real sign of stroke isn't always slurred speech or a collapsing face. Sometimes, it's much quieter. A moment of hesitation. An awkward grip. A cup of tea that suddenly feels hard to hold. And the reason it's so dangerous. It's because it's easy to explain away. It's just age. It's arthritis. It's nothing. But often, it's something. I remember a man named Bill. 74 years old. Retired accountant. Still sharp. He came in just to talk. No chest pain. No weakness. Just said, I've been fumbling my keys lately, and I forgot how to spell milk yesterday. It was enough for me to check deeper. We ran a scan. He had suffered a small TIA, a transient ischemic attack. A mini stroke. Within 48 hours, we changed his medication, adjusted his salt, and checked his hydration. He never had a full stroke. But only because he noticed the clumsiness. And he didn't ignore it. That's what I want you to remember. Your brain controls every tiny movement. When something feels off, don't brush it off. Because the first sign of stroke often feels like nothing at all. Before we move, before we speak, before we even think, our body is already at work. It's been resting for hours. Blood has slowed. The heart has taken a lighter pace. But now, with the first light, it begins again. And the very first thing it asks for is not coffee. Not news. Not sugar. It asks for water. But here's what most of us do. We wake up. Brush our teeth. Check the time. Maybe glance at the weather. And we reach for the coffee pot. Without a single thought for hydration. I used to do it too. Every morning. Black coffee. No breakfast. No water. It felt strong. It felt efficient. But it was doing something silent and dangerous inside me. Because after 6 to 8 hours without fluid, your blood becomes thicker. Not dangerously thick, not yet. But thick enough to flow more slowly. Clot easier. Stress the heart more. Strain the vessels that feed your brain. One study in the European Journal of Neurology found that low hydration in the morning was a contributing factor in nearly half of all first-time ischemic strokes. Let that sink in. Not genetics. Not age. Not diet. Just water. Wait, you didn't drink. Water your brain was waiting for. So tomorrow morning, before you do anything, before your feet hit the floor, before your first pill or your first scroll, drink a full glass of water. The room temperature is best. Even warm. Maybe with lemon. Maybe with gratitude. You're not just quenching thirst. You're waking up your blood. You're helping your brain breathe. And after 60, that's not just a good idea. It's survival. After we drink water, many of us do something else. Something quiet. Something that feels restful. We sit. On the edge of the bed. On the couch. At the table. We tell ourselves we're easing into the day. We check our phone. We scroll. We think. Sometimes we just sit. And I get it. After 60, mornings feel slower. Stiff joints. Sleepy muscles. So we take our time. But here's the truth I've come to learn. Stillness is not always peace. Sometimes, it's pressure. Because when you stay seated for 20, 30 minutes after hours of lying down, your blood begins to pool in your lower body. Your heart has to work harder to push it back up. And for seniors, whose vessels are less elastic, that lag in circulation can mean less oxygen reaching the brain. I've known patients who had strokes not from stress, but from sitting too long after waking. Then, standing suddenly, and headed straight to the bathroom. One of them, George, 81, had done it for years. But one morning, he stood up too fast, felt dizzy, and blacked out. We later learned a clot had likely formed overnight. And that moment of strain sent it upward. That moment changed everything. So now, I do things differently. Before I even get out of bed, I roll my ankles. I flex my feet. I move my fingers and shoulders in little circles. I warm up the body before I ask it to rise. Then I stand slowly. I stretch. I take 5 slow steps. Not to go anywhere, but to tell my blood, it's time to flow. Because for seniors, stillness in the morning isn't neutral. It's a choice. And it can be dangerous if we don't respect the transition from sleep to movement. So tomorrow, don't just wake up. Wake up wisely. After sitting still, many of us walk straight to the kitchen. Not for food, but for pills. Blood pressure pills. Cholesterol pills. Diabetes pills. A handful of tiny warriors we trust to keep us alive. But here's what often happens. We take those pills on an empty stomach. And then, we drink coffee. Maybe nothing else until lunch. It feels normal. It feels efficient. But inside, it creates the perfect storm. You see, after 60, our bodies don't regulate blood sugar like they used to. The brain depends on steady glucose. It doesn't store much. So when we skip breakfast, especially after a night without food, we risk hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. And when that happens, the brain is the first to suffer. Now add medication, many of which lower blood pressure or affect insulin levels. Now add caffeine, which spikes cortisol, narrows vessels. And what do you get? A lightheaded moment at the sink. A dizzy spell in the hallway. A slip. A fall. Or worse. A vascular collapse. I've seen it more times than I wish I had. Not from neglect. But from habit. From routine. But it doesn't have to be that way. Your brain doesn't need a feast. It just needs a signal. I'm fed. I'm safe. I can think clearly. So tomorrow, try this. Half a boiled egg. A spoonful of plain yogurt. A few soaked walnuts. Even a banana. Tiny bites. But they stabilize blood sugar. They soften the blow of pills. They tell your brain, you're supported. After 60, breakfast is no longer optional. It's protection. And it might be the most powerful medicine you take all day. You've had your water. Maybe a bite to eat. But before your brain fully wakes up, the world barges in. A headline. A message. A calendar reminder. A disagreement at the breakfast table. And just like that, a peaceful morning turns into pressure. Most people think stress is something you feel. But after 60, stress is something your body remembers. Because while your eyes are still adjusting to light, your cortisol, the stress hormone, has already peaked. That's normal. It's part of the body's wake-up rhythm. But what we do next can turn that natural rise into a dangerous spike. When we open our phone before we open our eyes fully. When we scroll through bad news. Read angry emails. Or argue with someone we love before we've even stood up. We amplify the pressure. We stack stress on top of stress. And here's what that does. It narrows blood vessels. Raises blood pressure. Makes the heart beat faster. And in older adults, that triple hit increases stroke risk significantly. A 2015 study in the Journal of Stroke followed over 90,000 people. Those who experienced high psychological stress in the first 3 hours after waking had the highest stroke rates, even when their blood pressure and cholesterol were under control. Why? Because the brain wakes up vulnerable. And we overload it before it can stabilize. That's why I no longer check the news first thing. I don't open my phone in bed. Instead, I breathe. Stretch. Listen to something soft. Even 5 minutes of calm. It can make a difference. Because health after 60 isn't about avoiding stress altogether. It's about giving your brain a chance to absorb life gently. So tomorrow morning, give yourself that grace. Let the day arrive quietly. Now here's the last habit. And in many ways, it's the most invisible of them all. Stillness. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that comes with a cup of tea and a quiet book. I'm talking about the kind that lingers. That stretches across the morning. From the edge of the bed. To the kitchen chair. To the couch. You're not sleeping. You're not moving. You're just existing. And that, my friend, it is more dangerous than it seems. Because after 60, circulation needs help. Our veins don't push blood upward as easily. The heart has to work harder. And when we sit still for 30, 60, even 90 minutes, blood slows. It pools in the legs. It waits. And that waiting can become a trigger. We've seen it in hospitals for decades. Patients who stay in bed too long develop clots. But what many don't realize is that the same thing. It can happen in everyday life. Even in your living room. I had a neighbor, Dorothy, 78. She loved her morning routine. Wake up, make tea, and sit by the window for an hour. No harm in that, right? Until one day, she stood up. Took 3 steps. And collapsed. Doctors found a clot in her leg that had traveled. It was likely building slowly. Quietly. In all that stillness. So now, I do this. After I stretch, after I breathe, after I eat. I move. Nothing crazy. Just 5 to 10 minutes of light motion. March in place. Reach overhead. Walk to the mailbox. Water the plants. Open the curtains and walk from room to room. You're not doing it to exercise. You're doing it to live. Because when blood flows, the brain breathes. And when the brain breathes, You give your day the best chance to stay yours. If you've made it this far, take a breath. You've just listened to some of the quietest dangers we face after 60. Not accidents. Not headlines. But habits. The things we do without thinking. The ways we start our day on autopilot. But here's the truth no one tells you. Health isn't lost all at once. It slips away in the mornings we rush. The moments we ignore. The signals we dismiss with a tired smile and say, "It's just age." But it's not age. It's absence. Absence of awareness. Absence of presence. And the antidote is intention. See, I used to think the big changes mattered most. Drastic diets. Expensive supplements. Wearable devices. But no. What changed me? It was one slow morning. One sip of water I didn't rush. One stretch I didn't skip. One breath I noticed. It wasn't dramatic. But it was decisive. Because in that moment, I realized something. The way we greet the morning. It is the way we greet life. So greet it slowly. Gently. Gratefully. Not every morning will be perfect. But every morning can be present. You don't need a full routine tomorrow. You just need a pause. To drink. To breathe. To move. To remember that your brain, your heart, your life. Are you still listening? Let them know you care. That is the morning that changes everything. If you're still here, thank you. You didn't just watch a video. You stayed through a conversation that most people avoid. Because it's quiet. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it asks us to look inward. But that's what healing often looks like. It starts not with action, but with attention. And that's exactly what you've given yourself today. So before we part ways, let me offer you something simple. Start small. Start slow. But start. You don't have to become a different person tomorrow. You just have to make a different choice. And if you need support, I'm here. In the video description, you'll find a free checklist I created. Stroke-free morning, a gentle start guide. It's not a program. Not a product. Just a list of tiny reminders. To tape near the kettle. To tuck into your medicine cabinet. Or to share with someone you love. And if something today touched you, please don't keep it to yourself. Scroll down. And in the comments, tell me. What's the one morning habit you'll change starting tomorrow? Your words might help someone else begin their gentle shift. That's how we heal, together. In stories. In small steps. In shared silence. And if this video gave you even a moment of peace, I'd be honored if you subscribed. Not for the numbers. But because maybe, just maybe, we're building something here. A quiet circle. Of elders. Of learners. Of humans trying to live one day more wisely than the last. Next week, I'll be back. We'll talk about the one bedtime mistake that could undo everything you built in the morning. But until then, be kind to your brain. Be patient with your heart. And remember, you are not too old. You are not too late. And you are never, ever alone.